Good morning, everyone. This is Beth Godd with Talking Purple. Happy 2026. Today's January 12th. It's our first day back in the new year for us and our podcast. And boy, do we have a lot to go over and maybe even some to catch up on. This whole Renee Good story is one thing. We've got Venezuela, we've got Somalis, um, but it all comes down to, some of it comes down to money, really. Um, but I think we're going to start at the top and I'm going to work my way backwards for everybody because this Renee Good story is really, really, really starting to bother me. And it's starting to bother me because how it is amorphosizing into something that it really, really isn't. So, first of all, let's start with, again, working backwards. For those of you that don't know, this woman went and put herself in the middle of an ICE raid and then got shot in the face. And the left has seized on it as, the ICE are horrible people. The right is seizing on it, see, look what this person did. And I'm going to tell you, if you don't put yourself in harm's way, you don't find yourself shot in the face. Okay. And it's really some pretty basic tenets to all of this. First of all, to my mind, we have created a dangerous situation where people feel that they have to take the law in their own hands and that somehow we have our own tanks in Tiananmen Square going on here. So let's back up a second and let's see, I think, where really most people are. I'm going to remind everybody I'm a naturalized citizen. I had to do that yesterday, by the way. I put a Facebook post and some guy cussed me out, said I didn't know my roots, something about Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Italy, and that I didn't know about how my grandparents got here. And the reality is, I'm a naturalized American citizen, and I have a how I came to America story much different than everybody else's. I was adopted, bought here, that kind of stuff. So I have a different story than everybody else. But it doesn't mean that I didn't have to go through the immigration system and didn't have to go through the struggles of becoming legal. And maybe that's the place to start. Okay. So what I want everybody to understand, and I ran into this at a meeting I went to. There's a person running named Crystal running for CD9 here down in Texas. And she got up and she addressed the illegals, and she's of Mexican heritage, and she was addressing it, and she was saying that she felt like nobody is addressing the immigration issue in the country. And I agree with that, but I don't agree with that. President Trump in his first term, he came out and said, I'm going to get rid of DACA. And Congress, go pass a law, and I promise you I will sign it. Whatever law you put in place that handles immigration, DACA, amnesty, I'll sign because that's what you want, and we have to solve the problem. And to date, nobody's introduced legislation. Nobody's solving the problem. Nobody, because nobody wants the problem solved. And this Renee Good situation kind of backs up my points on this, if you will. Okay, so remember, we have a president of the United States that says Congress pass a law and we will sign it. All right. So that is the way out of this entire situation with immigration. Pass a law. Now, my opinion of the law, which I don't know that I would ever get it through, would be make non-criminal illegal aliens, which sounds like an oxymoron because just the simple fact that they're illegal makes them criminal, but non-violent criminal, let's put that out there. Non-violent criminal illegal aliens, um, make them legal residents, give them all rights to the United States except the right to vote. Because I think that and I think they should be required to learn English because there's a cultural problem which kind of swings down into the Somali problem as well. So when I get there, we'll talk about that. But for now, let's kind of stay on illegal immigration at large. Okay. So we had an administration that let 20 million people into the country not knowing who they are. We have American citizens getting murdered, apartment complexes getting taken over by the criminal element that came across the border. Now, we're not talking about visa overstayers, but where I want to start too is say there is no pathway to citizenship once you're in the country and you become illegal. So if you walk across the southern border, there's no pathway for you to become here legal. Okay. So when you're mad that you don't get certain rights and certain this and certain that, you knew that when you walked across the border. The visa overstayers are a little bit different because they had visas, they came into the country, and they were here for one reason or another. The problem with the visa system is it too is a mess. And because it's a mess, people are having their visas expire. They can't get through the process to get that visa renewed or re-upped. And because they can't get through that process, they're now in the illegal category and there's no pathway. So there's real problems here with the system that needs to, it really does need to have a pathway, especially for the visa overstayers. There needs to be something there that says, hey, wait up, it's our fault that your visa expired. It's not your fault. It's our fault because our government bureaucracy can't process them fast enough. And therefore, let us work through the process with you. So they're a different problem. But these 20 million people that walked across the southern border, whether it be through Texas and through the Rio Grande Valley, whether it be through New Mexico or Arizona. California is weird because San Diego, it seems like there's a wall there and they don't come in through San Diego. It seems like they all want to come through Texas. So when you look at all of that, we have a problem. I think most normal Americans understand that we have a criminal element that was imported into this country that puts our citizens, our young people, and our children at risk. I grew up at a time when it was okay to go play on your front lawn. I don't think a lot of people these days let their kid go play on the front lawn unsupervised because you don't know what's going to happen. And there's this element that seems to be everywhere now. Anybody that wants to say that's not the case, I hope your person's never murdered by a legal person. I hope you never get in a car accident with an illegal person and they kill your child, or they rear end you and then run from the accident because they shouldn't be here and they don't have the legal credentials and they don't have car insurance. So there's a lot of things and a lot of people that are being harmed beyond the, well, lowering wages, causing housing crises, causing explosion on the medical system, that our fees are higher. I mean, I'm not even looking at that parts of it. I'm looking at simply we have people in the United States of America that are being murdered because of people that are in this country that should not be, because other countries let their jails out and dumped them into this country. And anybody that thinks that didn't happen, I'm sorry for you, but that is the truth of the matter. Crime doesn't go to zero in some of these countries, and their criminal population go to zero. No, they open the doors, let them out, and send them to the United States. And that's what we are dealing with. So a logical person that doesn't have brain rot understands this. Okay. And I think that's probably 80% of the public understands that we have a criminal element running around our country that was not our country. Every country has borders. Every country. I can't just walk into Mexico. All right. So let's just take that. Europe, there's the European Union now, and they scan the license plates as you're going over the border. I mean, we just did this from Germany and France. I mean, as we came over, the Germans were scanning license plates and knew who was in those cars. And, it's not like it used to be that you had to stop and go through customs and go through the border and go through this and go through that. I mean, they wave you through because they know from a license plate scan. And if your license plate doesn't scan right, they pull you over. And otherwise, you just kind of keep right on going at 120 miles an hour. It's awesome over there from that standpoint. Okay, so we have this lady, and actually, she's really representative of an entire culture. Okay, that felt it was okay to get in her car, drive to a place where a government action was going on or a law enforcement action was going on and put herself in the middle of it, trying to what? Save people that were here illegally? You don't know the people they were after. You don't know what they were doing. The left has created horrible, horrible fear within the Hispanic population. I mean, I was talking to somebody and they said some days they can't even get workforces to come to work because not because they're illegal, but they're afraid they're going to get picked up. I mean, we have created a rhetoric in this country that it's really it goes speaks to that propaganda problem that I keep referring to. So this lady got up, she goes to this protest, and she gets shot in the face because as we were all taught with children, when the police tell you to get out of the car, you get out of the car. When the police tell you to stop, you stop. And when you don't, you have to face the consequences for that. These are conscious decisions. And I'll tell you what other conscious decision was made. Okay. This lady's what, 37, 38 years old? She's got a 6-year old. The baby daddy is dead. So now we have a kid who was second. They're just as much of a victim, if you will, as the people that have their loved ones murdered because this kid now has no parents. And I'm not upset that this kid has no parents because the lady was shot. To me, that lady put herself in harm's way and didn't have regard for her kid. So this is somewhat backwards. Your one job as a parent is to protect your children and to do what you need to do. And going and putting yourself in the middle of an ice raid so you can make your own, DIY documentary or whatever they were doing. I mean, it's a tell when the one person jumps out of the car and starts filming with their cell phone. It tells you exactly where we're at. I mean, she almost needs a shirt that says, "My wife was killed because I was making a TikTok video." I know that's a little harsh, but the reality of it is that the critical thought process in the country and among a certain segment of the country continues to degrade. And so this weekend, and I think I don't understand, but I do understand as I say this. So I live in a town, about 50,000 people live here. It is 95% Republican. Okay. I often say it's Mayberry, for those of you that don't live here. It has that old world or the days gone by feel of America. It's what people look for. A place where you can send your kids to school and neighbors know neighbors. And um, it's a whole community of this. And what ended up happening is we swung the mayoral election away from Sheila Jackson Lee to John Whitmire. And John Whitmire has been doing a fantastic job. I mean, for having a Democrat mayor and telling you I live in a Republican area, what I will tell you is this guy has been the mayor. And if everybody in government would act like John Whitmire, we would be all fantastic. I can't even begin to say that again enough. He was out here this weekend helping trim trees. Down the street from that, Indivisible decided to stage a protest. Now, here's the thing. If you're going to have a protest, what are you protesting? What are you hoping to achieve by your protest? And this idea of, well, I am just exercising my First Amendment rights. To do what? I mean, I'm exercising my First Amendment rights right now, and I'm saying what I'm saying. but I'm doing it in hopes that I get some people to understand that the truth of the world lies in the middle, and you can't believe everything you see. So, what I've noticed now is I think that they've decided that if they come to Kingwood, they can have a protest and they can have protesters. There's like these five people that stand up by Dan Crenshaw's office too every day. I don't really know. Like, I don't understand why they don't just go get a job. Why they're, oh, wait, maybe they're being paid. Maybe that is their job. And I said that on social media. I went on my Facebook and I said, hey, we have a tale of two cities. I've got a civic action where they're cleaning up medians and beautifying the city. And then I have these other people that are standing on the side of the road protesting some woman that decided that it was more important to get involved in a police action than it was to raise her own children. So, and I don't even know that they understand that why they're doing it. So then this morning I get up and I get a text message. They're fundraising off of this. So let's look at how this works, okay? You have an event. You make it look like there's outrage. You make sure that there's an optics, and then you go fundraise to get money to stop whatever the problem is. It all comes down to the mighty dollar. So the people up here are manipulating the people down here so the people up here get money. And I think that's intrinsically evil. And I think that's the stuff we don't understand. So why are you protesting? What are you doing? What are you hoping to achieve by this? Because the puppet masters that hired the people that hired you or that called you and said, hey, you got to come to this protest, they're doing it so they get money. And everything is scripted and an aberration. I don't know what's the right word for it, but everything is scripted, folks. And I mean, I think once we understand that we live in Wag the Dog, maybe we can start blunting some of this. Okay. Because we have people now so married to the situation that they're getting in their car and jumping in the middle of a law enforcement action. So let's kind of look at this differently. If I said to you, I went to the bank and the bank was robbed, would you run to the bank to go run into the bank? No. So why are you running into the middle of an ice raid? Because you don't believe in the ice raid because you think somehow it's okay for these people to stay here. Instead, go protest for your congressman to make legislation so that you can change the law to achieve what you want. If you want them to stay here, you don't go bust up an ice raid. You go stand on the stairs in Washington and have a protest that says, make a law. And when you do that, that's how you bring about speakable change. So to have civil disobedience without a purpose is ridiculous to me. And all it does is make optics for somebody to get rich and for somebody to make money and for somebody to have a fundraising event. And I think the left, the right, the middle, they all need to understand what's happening here. So, in that same vein, we have the same problem within social media. This lady got out of the car to make a TikTok video because she was going to go be, I guess, I don't know, live a TikTok. I really don't know what she was going to go do with her video. Um, so we've got that. So social media is feeding it that way. And then we have all the people over on social media. It's kind of funny because I have my own Twitter X profile, and I set one up for Talking Purple. And I guess I'm doing a good job of left and right because the algorithm doesn't know what to do with me. So it's been giving me both sides of the equation, which is exactly what I want it to do. Because at the end of the day, I want to understand where the breakdown is. Okay. So within this, we have people going, see, look, the people are protesting. This is not what you voted for because they're trying to undermine a president. They have this big problem with all of this. So let me ask you this, and this is just and it's really enough. How many out there know the history of the Bolshevik Revolution? I'm going to say most of you don't, but one of the biggest takeaways from it, I actually love the whole story of Tsar Nicholas and all of that. So I kind of know a lot about it. Not that I'm, some scholar on it, but the one thing that always stuck out at me is that they overthrew the Tsar of Russia, but they didn't have a plan of what's next. And that's what I have going on here. If you destroy the United States of America, what do you think is happening? And then I'm going to ask another question. Whenever somebody says this is democracy, when you hear the word democracy, insert the word mob rule, because democracy is mob rule. It's why the founders of this country went with a constitutional republic as opposed to a democratic equal that way. It's why the House of Representatives was set up the way it was. The Senate was set up differently. I still say that's the biggest undermining of the country was making the Senate directly elected, but we'll save that fight for a different day. But the reality is democracy is equivalent of mob rule, and you can't live with mob rule. Okay, it's not a viable way to do things. And then we have people coming in and shouting down uh the other side. So they're bullies. And right now, what I think we have in this country is 20% of the country, some of which own the apparatus of the media. We are the most propagandized society on earth. And we somehow think we're above it all and we're immune to it all. So we don't do our due diligence to make sure we understand the problem and then critically think about it. That's the other thing that's going away in this society is critical thinking. You just believe something because somebody else says it, and then you go with it. I put up a post saying the protesters were paid, and everybody, there's like 100 people that showed up on the side of the road. And the first thing some of these folks said was, well, I was there, I wasn't paid. No, but the organizers were paid. So they got you, and then if they didn't get enough of you, they went and got other people from other communities come into my community to make it look like there was a bigger presence of Democrats in this community than there are. Everybody that lives here knows that there's less than 10% of the folks here are Democrats, and some of them are old school Democrats. Okay, when Democrats were normal people, like JFK Democrats, all right, that they have sense, or they're like Harold Ford. I mean, that they have sense and they understand why they believe, or Whoopi Goldberg. I will say she's another one that I think she understands why she believes what she believes. I respect that. If you understand the principles of things and you know why you believe, but don't just jump on the mob rule. The country was built on immigrants. It was. And they were people that were coming here to assimilate into the United States. They weren't a criminal element from Venezuela, Tren de Aragua, that wanted to take over an apartment complex or take over Portland. And in fact, frankly, the mayor of Portland in tears had to admit that the president of the United States was right, that it was Tren de Aragua that was involved in that incident up there. These are guerrilla type things going on in this world. So, they're basically people at war with our country. Why are we not standing up for our country? We're too busy about fighting the president of the country or fighting the people that support the president than we are about the people that are an invading force within our country that are trying to change the fabric of our situation, which then leads me into Somalia. Okay. So apparently the state of Minnesota is a shit show. I don't know what else to say. Sorry for the language, but I don't know what else to say about Minnesota other than thank God Tim Walz is not our vice president of the United States. We dodged a bullet there, folks. Um, there is that. Um, it also shows you how good Kamala Harris's decision making is that she selected that guy for vice president instead of the governor of Pennsylvania, which would have won her the election. Just saying. So just throw that one out sideways. All right. So Tim Walz, Somalia. Somalia has taken over Minnesota, so much so that Minnesota has changed its state flag to be basically a mimic of the country of Somalia. Um, that's not a good thing. That's not how it should be. And then we have people like Illa Omar that are using the United States government to further her political agenda. If you want to come to the United States, you need to come to the United States and be part of the United States. I am an immigrant. I have said that. I have a naturalization certificate. I do everything I can to learn about this country, assimilate into this country. I have no accent. Notice that? Oh, well, I do. I have one from New Jersey. Okay. But I don't have an Italian accent. I live in this country. I learned my language. Everybody asks me if I speak Italian. My Italian is so small. It's not even other than pizza and mozzarella. I don't really even know what else I know. All right. So those are the kind of things you need to come here and assimilate. You don't come in and defraud the whole country. And apparently Somalia has taken over Minnesota. So now Somalia is now our 50th state. And I don't know that Minnesota, I don't know what Minnesota thinks, but I went there in the 80s and it was a lovely place and the people were lovely and they were all of Scandinavian and Viking descent. But they took their elements, brought them into the country and were Americans. We now also seem to have a missing children all over because there's all these daycares with no children in them. I don't know whether the children were taken in a alien takeover, meaning they came from Mars and sucked up our kids. Maybe they were raptured. You know, some people think they were, but there's daycares all over the place that have no children in them because they're defrauding the United States taxpayer. They think so little of the people that live here in this country that they are here scamming the country and taking money because we're stupid Americans. We are so much think that we're so, what do I want to say it, that we think we're better than everybody else, that we're not protecting ourselves from these elements that people are coming in and they're just taking from us. And the left is facilitating it because they're like, well, they're just looking for a better life. Okay, looking for a better life and defrauding the United States of billions of dollars are not equal. You want to get up, you want to go to work. You know, I own my own business. I own the American dream. I mean, I started my company with $150. That's becoming an American, not coming here to defraud the country. That spits in the face of the country. That's not being good citizens. That's being criminals, saying, hey, if I go over here, I can enrich myself. If they catch me, I get to go back to Somalia. Okay? I'm going to say this, and I believe this, and I'm going to give you a different example of something. Okay? So when you go somewhere, you have an obligation to fit in to where you go, to assimilate, and to be part of the community that you're going to. Okay? So me, I leaving Italy behind for a second, I went from New York and came to, well, from New Jersey and came to Texas. And I have some of my New Jersey, other than my attitude or my accent. I have my attitude. Um, but I love Texas. Texas is to me the best place on earth. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. Um, I have some of my Texas stuff go on that I've assimilated, although no, they've got me to not say pecan anymore instead of pecan. So I don't like pecan pie. I just can't quite get there. And there's a few things in that way. Um, but overall, I've come here and I embraced it. And you know, my dad said to me, when you got here, I would say those people. And he's like, those people, you live with those people now. You can't continue to have the attitude that you're better just because you're from New York or New Jersey. And I thought that was a very, but that's the thing. You got to get here and then you need to assimilate with where you live. And I think I've done that. I've blended some of my own self in. When I grew up with a lot of first generation parents that were, you know, they were the ones that came to the United States from Italy and they were raising their kids. And at home, um, it was like being back in the old country. But when you got up and you went to work and you went front facing, those people were Americans, because they wanted to be here and they didn't want to defraud people. And I think that's again the thing that we're not discerning and we're not making different and um we're not embracing this properly. I want people to come here because they want to come here. There's a lady that's running for county judge here in Harris County, and I really respect everything that she's had to say. But the one thing that she'll tell you is that they came here and escaped China, and the first thing their parents did was give them names and say, "Okay, pick your name." Because you're not going to keep your Chinese name. You need an American name. You need to be an American. And that's the kind of people that we want. And I've known so many people that have come here, Muslim, Italian, German, Polish, large concentrations of people, but they all wanted to come here because they were escaping and they wanted a better life. Not that they were coming here to tell me how to make my country like where you left. If where you left is so great, go back there. Don't come here. You don't need to. You like where you were. But that's not what you want. What you want is to come here and make my country like the hellhole you left. What the heck's wrong with you? And then we have the people that support it. And I ask, what's wrong with you? So we have a lot of that kind of going on here. So we need to understand really what you're supporting. And I think that social media amplifies wrong messaging. The entire situation is a propaganda. So much so that this woman was so steeped in all of this that she got in her car and decided to go throw herself in the middle of a law enforcement action. Um, that is wrong too. The people that are ginning up people to this degree for their own personal embetterment, um, that's wrong just as well. So there's so much wrong with this, far more than some poor lady, some innocent bystander got shot in the face, because she was not an innocent bystander. She was a participant and she caused this and basically brought it on herself. You know, I mean, my parents told me don't go to Fort Apache because you might get shot. I never went to Fort Apache. I did make a wrong turn, landed there once. Um, but overall, yeah, you don't go to Fort Apache. You don't go to Harlem. We were told don't go to Harlem as kids, as young kids. And this was back in before Rudy Giuliani, and you would go down the Cross Bronx Expressway, and all the cars were up on blocks because it was a haven for crime. So if you don't want to get murdered, you don't go where those places are. I mean, it's pretty simple. So that's that. I've got the Somalis. We addressed that. Tim Walz, gosh, I think he's going to resign. He probably needs to after this because he allowed all of this to go on. I think he's probably in on it, in my opinion. I don't have any proof or not proof of that, but somehow he's resigning for a reason. You don't resign if you're innocent. Um, so there is that as well. And then I want to talk about the 3D chess mission that the president has going on in Venezuela, because I think that's also um, getting misconstrued. Um, Maduro, bad guy. So much so that even Joe Biden recognized he was a bad guy. Now, whether it was Joe Biden, his auto pen, or whoever was actually running the government for 4 years, I don't know, but at least they did something with Joe Biden. Okay, with Maduro. The thing is that we don't understand and that we don't know because we don't critically think and we don't pull our heads out and look around. And if it's not on social media, we don't know about it. Is China is the biggest threat to the United States. Probably Russia too, but China is a humongous threat. They have a different culture and a different belief, and they believe in world domination and they want to take everything over. They get their oil from Venezuela. Okay. And the thing is that in order to stop your enemy, if they have no oil, they become not as potent. Iraq is the same situation, or excuse me, Iran is the same situation. Okay, so some of the ways that Iran has been contained when we had some sane policies and not just giving them money, um, was that it was controlled through um, cutting off oil. That's what's the value of sanctions are, is just like when you punish a kid and you take away their cell phone. If you take away the ability to sell what you can sell, you start to create a situation where change needs to come about. Iran, and I mean, this goes back hundreds of years, but Iran, thousands of years before Christ, really. Um, they want the annihilation of the Jews. Be that right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't care what you believe on that. That's their goal. So are we going to sit by and let an entire group of people be eradicated from the planet? And you have to really start to understand this. And again, it goes back to lack of critical thinking, okay? But you know, uh, everybody decried Hitler for annihilating Jewish people. So why would we not want to continue to take steps to make sure other groups of people don't pick that banner up and go with it? You've got China over there that wants to control the world economy, and they're doing it. If you cut off their oil, you cut off their ability to become a juggernaut. You keep them contained because you have to decide. Everybody doesn't stay in their own borders, okay? And a China that's trying to take over the world would try to take over the world. And it's not just about American supremacy. It's the same reason we had to go into Germany and stop Hitler. And frankly, I think if World War II was being fought now, I don't think we would have won World War II because as a people, we don't seem to understand, being responsible and helping people and doing the right thing. And I guess it could be argued that, hey, let them go fight it out on their own. I don't know if I like that, hey, let them go fight it out on their own idea. I don't know if that's where we should be as a people. So I if you understand world politics and you understand foreign policy, it actually was a pretty smart move to get rid of Maduro and get Venezuela so that we have some manner of control to stop the Chinese and the Iraqis, or excuse me, the Iranians. I keep getting Iran, Iraq, too, as always been. Um, because we don't really need world domination on some by some of these people. You think your life is bad now because you can't buy eggs? How about there are no eggs to buy? So I think this is those things that we need to talk about. So I think I'm going to give the president a lot of props for that, for doing that. On the local front, we've got, I'm going to say right now, I love Wesley Hunt. I hope he takes out John Cornyn. I went to this thing, I went to this thing this weekend, and somebody said, "Oh, there's 5 John Cornyn people up there." And when they announced John Cornyn's name, nobody clapped. I was like, yes, okay, because Cornyn needs to go. Um, I don't necessarily, Wesley Hunt is the right choice for this. Um, Paxton, it just, I don't know. I like Paxton to a degree. I think he's done a great job as Attorney General overall. I think now we're just throwing out lawsuits just because we know we're never going to see the light of day, but it sounds good on paper. Um, but I really, really, really like Wesley Hunt. So I think we should watch him. I think he's an up and comer. I think that if we all get out and we pay attention, we as Republican primary voters should start to understand that. Um, Steve Toth just continues to lie his little butt off, in my opinion, just lie after lie. And then he did something stupid. And I thought this was really horrible and really just poor taste, not even just just classless. Okay. So, Dan Crenshaw's my congressman, and he has done really good things for the Lake Houston region, for the area, because when he walked in, right after he became congressman, we ended up with Hurricane Harvey, and it changed, I think, his role and what his role was with the community and what needed to happen, because we had all this um, uh, flooding problems that really just kind of came up and out of nowhere, to the extent that they are. It happened a long time ago. It should have never happened again, kind of a thing. So he has done yeoman's work for Lake Houston, and I keep saying to the people that are, want to. I went to lunch with somebody and they were telling me Dan Crenshaw this, Dan, and I said, look, I don't care. I said, at the end of the day, this area needs to have somebody that understands the flooding issues and that is taking them seriously. And until the gates out at that lake are fixed to protect this community, um, there really is no other discussion to have. Okay, so that's where I'm kind of at there. So Toth comes out and he made some comments somewhere. Crenshaw made a comment about Toth being owning a pool service, and Toth ran around and um, saying um, that Crenshaw was anti-small business. So there's been this constant, and that could be further from the truth. I own a small business, and Crenshaw's been extremely supportive of small business. So we have that. So that was a lie. So then we have this whole thing that happened where the Afghani guy shot the two National Guard people up in DC. And Toth came back and blamed that on Crenshaw. Now, I thought it was particularly classless and tasteless because Crenshaw lost his eye in Afghanistan fighting for this country. So trying to hang that on him and not understanding the dynamics of the danger to some of those Afghanis that were over there, and trying to be like, see, you let this person to come into the country, you're a horrible person. Class, half class. The dude lost his eye in Afghanistan. The heck are you even talking about? I would not have gone down that road. And I don't know whoever advised him to go down that road or he did it on his own. Just completely classless. So he continues to lie and distort the truth and try to make stuff up, like this whole anti-small business. I, you know, so just that was crazy. So then this weekend, um, I had somebody in my office, and what they said to me was, and I think this should hold true for everybody. Ronald Reagan said something very important. I can agree with somebody 80% of the time and they're an ally. It doesn't mean that that the other 20% that you should weigh yourself on that because they're traitors. And I think that's the problem the Republican Party has, is that they try to be purist. And, well, I agree with you here. I don't agree with you. I have to agree with you 100% of the time, or I can't support you. And I feel like that's kind of what we have going on here. Dan Crenshaw has supported his local district. That's what his job is. Okay. So all this other noise in the echo chamber is to try to weaken the Republican party and weaken the congressional delegation from Texas by taking somebody like Crenshaw out. Trump likes Crenshaw. Crenshaw travels with Trump. Trust me, if he didn't like him, he wouldn't be near him. Okay. So those are the kind of things that there's all of this going on, and yet, you know, we have this guy that I don't know what he's doing. He's another one that's, maybe it's just money. I don't know what he's doing, but he's not seeming to want to run to represent the people. Take Brett Ligon on the other side, though. I like him. He's running for SD9 to replace Brandon Creighton. Okay. He has come, he's listened to everybody. He's learned the issues. He doesn't keep telling us we're all wrong, or that somehow he had some friend that had something, so therefore he has a shared experience with us. You don't have a shared experience, Steve Toth. There is no shared experience. So if I look at both of those men, both from Montgomery County, I've got one that's a career politician per se, that seems to be in the back pocket of the builders, that God, he's going to make a big mess with the GLO. Um, I, I just need him to go away, and we need Dan Crenshaw to stay where he is. Um, and then I have this Brett Ligon, who has just been exceptional with trying to get to know the people that want to represent him, because he's more of a district attorney kind of a guy and not a polished politician kind of guy. So there's that going on. And then we have our county judge race. And I want to take a little bit of a minute to address this as well. There's a lot of, let me start at the end here. I save this because I wanted to tell you about this. So I actually saved it to my phone, which is not something that I typically do. I need to do more of it, I suppose. Let me find it. So there was a post from Anise Parker, and it says, I am furious at what we are seeing from ICE across the country. Law enforcement should never operate in the shadows, wearing masks, refusing to identify themselves, and carrying out actions that terrorize families and communities. This is not about public safety. It's about fear, and fear has no place in Houston or anywhere else. Our country is built on the hard work of immigrants. Um, just the stand blah, blah. We can still enforce the law and respect human dignity. Okay. This is what's going to come to us in Harris County if we don't watch ourselves and pick the right candidate to go run against her. And I keep hearing about this firefighter guy, and his name is Marty. And I went and heard Marty, and Marty's a union boss. And Marty has a lot of Democrat friends. He doesn't have as many Republican friends. He does now because he's running on the Republican ticket for county judge. And in the past, Republicans have supported him for some of the efforts with the firefighters, because everybody likes firefighters. I like firefighters. I have a really good friend that's a Houston firefighter. So the thing is that I read when I read Ms. Parker's response is agents wearing masks, refusing to identify themselves. They're having to wear masks so their children don't get killed, because the people on your side of the aisle are going and doxing their families and threatening their families. So the people that are living in fear are the people that are living in fear, maybe should be living in fear because they're here illegally. They shouldn't be here, and they know they shouldn't be here. If you are not, I don't worry. All right, let me say this. Because I'm legal, do not worry about going and walking around and going to work or have fear in my community or afraid of an action. If ICE wants to come and knock on my door, come knock on my door. And I would be perfectly okay with that.